Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to another Supercoach Insider podcast. My name is Swiz, here to talk all things round 12 in the Supercoach and AFL world. All the ins and outs, all your questions, and there's been plenty of questions sent in from the community. We really appreciate the feedback, the interaction with you guys. It's amazing. And then naturally, there was a lot of questions this week because there's a lot going on. First round of the Supercoach buys. So there's a lot of discussion about that, and the mid-season draft, which took place on Wednesday, and 17 players got picked up. All their prices and players have been uploaded into the Supercoach data system, so plenty of discussion around them and who will be the first to, all the players that we should be looking at that were drafted the other night. As always, check us out on all our social media platforms, in particular the YouTube and Twitter. Supercoach Insider 100 for the boys. Ben and Chris do a magnificent job interacting with you guys on there, and Swiz 26 if you want me directly. Also Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Spotify if you want the audio platforms of this. Speaking of audio platforms, shout out to my friend Amanda for releasing her song Old Flame on Spotify and YouTube this week, so check that out. Always, great to support local artists. And also local businesses, as I always say. My friend Alicia, House of Bobbins, for those who are looking for a gift for their wife or female relative mainly, and that. Or she does some great stuff for babies, for nurseries as well. So shout out to her, and to the sponsors of our podcast, Splash Vodka. Beautiful their drink, especially more in the warmer weather, but. Yeah, I guess there's nothing wrong with a bit of vodka in the cold. It works, obviously, in those cold countries like Russia. So, get on the Splash Vodka, guys. Try to earn yourself some crypto and Manscaped. And as Ben said the other day, the Manscaped offer is starting to get close to expiry. So check out their stuff. Fantastic products to, keep yourself neat down below and also up top for your nose and your ears. So, definitely worth checking out, and we really appreciate the sponsors, like we appreciate you guys in the community. Talking about myself quickly, 2,460 was my score this week. Barely went up any rankings with that. It was a decent scoring week for many people. Actually, there's some real mixed scores, like the weekly winner was 2,700. A lot of the top players scored 20 in the 25s, but then I did see plenty of other scores around that 2,200 mark. So, I guess it really came down to what premiums you had, what captain you had. For me, I went Wits. It's a bit of a safety option there. A little in hindsight would have been nice to have Neil. Got me 7 out of 10 wins if I had Neil and a last-minute decision. And sort of a bit of a chat in our A-League chat to put McComb over Clark, just hoping McComb would get on the score, get a bit more of a scoreboard impact. So, though that cost me 9 points or 8 points there, and Neil would have been an extra 40 points. So, 7 out of 10 wins, which was still really good. Abdul, as I always talk about, I know he took a couple ranking slides. I think he's still inside the top 10, but he runs some great competitions on the Richmond forum. Where we have knockout competitions, and unfortunately I found myself knocked out in some of them. I know he posted to the Supercoach admins this week about some ideas, and one was a great idea about, at some point could we have like a knockout tournament in Supercoach where everybody, I guess, signs up who's signed up to Supercoach or in like groups, a bit like you'd have in a tennis tournament, think the Australian Open, and you might have your seeded players from the previous year, and just play each other, and it just gets knocked out week to week, and doesn't need to start round one. It could start later on or whatever, but I think that's not a bad idea as well. And as I keep saying, the draft formats, especially that I'm doing the NFL, the one that I'm really looking at the moment would be the auction ability to do an auction draft and that. So if you have ideas, keep heading up the Supercoach people, hit up us and that, and we can pass it on as well. There's been a lot of changes to Supercoach, which I have liked, but as always, the community that plays, we, anything we can do to try to get towards a more perfect product for all the users out there and have more users and retaining more users, it makes it better for a lot of us. So, keep throwing up your ideas there. All right, on to the ins and outs this week. Only the 6 games because we've got the bye rounds. So, we have the Friday night game, Doggies versus the Cats, And Bailey Smith is back for the Doggies. Out is Jordan Sweet. Huge news there because those who brought in Tim English, and I apologise to those who asked me about English last week, and I recommended holding for a week. Not that I didn't think he'd go terribly, but coming back from injury, Sweet still in the team, and it made no difference. He went massive and that. So I know Chris was one of those guys that brought him in, so well done to Chris. I was more banking on Witts, and I'm still happy with Witts because of his draw coming on the run home. But yeah, didn't Tim English look really good the other night? So be interesting to see how it goes. That was against West Coast. The opposition wasn't great. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see how he backs up now. Sole ruck, which is good, but then he gets a bye rest. So yeah, went up 25k, which is an interesting one. And now with Sweet out, Luke Cleary was the rookie that we're all hoping to come in, and then he was named as a sub. Luckily didn't come on. I know a couple of people, I think even Ben, risked the captaincy of Neil with him and didn't come on, so that could have been disaster. I know a few people got caught out with that in the Carlton game, I think it was, with Carroll. So yeah, unfortunately he's out and named in that first sub position, so just watch out for that one again. Then we've got the Cats with Rowan and Stanley in, out Evans, Nargle and Neil. The Crows versus the Eagles. Patrick Parnell makes his debut, and Tex Walker is back. Chase Jones, Butts and Luke Brown are out. And then West Coast in is Shannon Hearn, so a bit more relevant there for Witherden owners to see how that sort of affects Witherden. You know, he's sort of had some up and down games lately, but you know, started the season on a house like fire, so it'll be interesting to see how he goes with Hearn back in the side and how those kickouts, the distribution of kickouts in that game go. And out is Jones and Rotham. Suns versus North up in the Northern Territory. Suns are doing the double in the Territory. So we've got Farah and Day, and out Constable, Sharp and Casbolt. In Ben McKay and Zerha and Marnie are out, so not a lot to report from that point of view. But for the emergencies, it's the more interesting thing because Tistis is on the emergency list for the Suns, and Archer is on the emergency list for North. And I did have a question about how close is Archer. Well, he's listed as third emergency. You would expect Stephenson to be the sub, but it's clearly in their mind going forward for North. Elijah Hollins is still not on that emergency list, and that hopefully at some point they're going to play him because the kid's an absolute gentleman dominating the VFL. Melbourne had a loss last week, and they've decided to swing the axe. Out Melshcombe, Dunstan, Wiedemann, Stephen May injured, Bedford and Rivers, all those other ones omitted. Tomlinson, Salem, Langdon, Harms and Tommy McDonald are back for the Ds. Back is Blakely and Amati for the Swannies. Out Braden Campbell has been dropped, so I expect him to be named sub. So it'll be interesting to see how Lloyd's points go this week. That should spend a bit more time in the Swans defence. We've obviously playing the Ds at the G. And with Campbell not there as the outlet, it'll be interesting to see how many times the Swans go to Lloyd. Buddy's out for that hit. I'm not going to get into any controversial stuff with that because of being a Richmond supporter. And Matty Roberts for that one game had some really good under 18 numbers, but unfortunately barely hit the Supercoach scoreboard last week. Hawthorn Pies in Gunston, Callow, O'Meara, Morris, Hartigan and Reeves. Out McGuinness, Scrimshaw and Frost. And for the Pies, it's just in Chug, McInnes and Rusco. The extended bench on there, that's where it's interesting for us because of those who are hoping maybe a rookie's name. I know a few people have Reef McGuinness, so he's on the extended bench at the moment. Probably the most interesting one for those who still have him is McDonald is named on a wing. So that's a good thing for those owners there who are trying to get the maximise the amount of players that they have this week. And finally is the Fremantle-Brisbane game. And Freo have in Blakely, Hughes, Meek, Crowden, Wilson and Erasmus. Out is Heath Chapman, Taberner and Walters. And for the Lions, into McCluggage, Matheson, Thomas, Berry and Fullerton. Out is Mitch Robertson. And looking through that, Kitty Coleman is named on the bench at the moment. You would expect him to hold his spot. He's been playing very well. Erasmus is in the last spot, so I don't expect him to get a game this week for those who are holding him. They have named Will Brodie in the forward line, but hopefully that's just Freo playing a bit of funny buggers there. There has been some discussion about Neil being tagged by Aish, and Aish is named in the guts, and that is probably why Will Brody has been moved out, because it's Brayshaw, Sarong and Aish. So those who are thinking about captaining Neil this week, definitely something to consider, because they have said that they are planning to tag him, and it definitely shows that's going to be the case with that way the Freo Dockers have named that team. I'll move straight into that sort of captaincy this week and just the discussion around the buys. So it's best 18 on field. So I think I've got 22 all up available, or might be 20. I've got 20 on field, plus I'm loopholing Cooper Stevens off the bench. If he scores better than if he scores something decent, say at 60 or whatever, I'll just put McDonald off and bring Stevens into my thinking for that top 18 scores. So if you're somebody who has everyone playing, which is 22 players, Supercoach will take your best 18. So obviously the more players you have, the better chance you have of scoring a higher score, because it will deduct those scores, and you'll see that in the head-to-head fixtures. When you get to sort of that 19th player, the bottom one will drop out this week. It does make it really easy to do loopholing, especially for your VC and C, because any of those players that are missing this week, Carlton, Richmond, who else we got there? Essendon, the Giants. Good question on the other two buys. That shows a bit of unpreferred. St Kilda and Port Adelaide, the other two. So yeah, if you've got any of those players, really easy to just stick the captaincy on one of them and bringing them on field if that's the case. And in my case, I've still got two of the defenders on field, which so if my VC, which a bit of discussion at the moment, and I'm sort of leaning a couple different ways, but it's probably going to be Laird playing West Coast. So if he goes sort of 125 plus, I'll just stick the captaincy on Hewitt, and then don't have any stress with that. And then I'm looking at, as with the bit of that captaincy talk, looking at either a Took or a Witts as captain if Laird was to fell. Dogs on a Friday night, plenty of options there. McRae, Dunkley, both have the ability to go 140 plus. Geelong, obviously a better team, but it is at Marvel. Those who have Tim English or looking to bring in Tim English, definitely something to consider there as a vice captain, because of their ability to go high. And then you've got the Ds as well, who are on the rebound. Oliver Track had an illness last week. And then you've got Gawn, who's up against Laddams in the ruck. So any of those players. Neil is there as a backup, but as I said, Freo are looking to tag this week. So maybe just leave that one alone. So yeah, some very interesting discussions around that. All right, on to these mid-season drafts, because I know a lot of people have asked questions about that, and we will get into them. So of the players that have been picked up, Will Hayes, former Dog, has gone to the Blues. We've got Brady Turner for Adelaide. Those two have been carving up from an AFL fantasy point of view. Will Hayes is averaging 117 over 6 games this year. Brady Turner is 108 average, playing in the Sandful. He's been averaging close to 24 touches a game. So one probably to look at there for Turner, because of his just because of the Crows and the way they'll be blooding players. So I'd have him high on my list. Josh Carmichael was that bigger inside midfielder. I know a few Pies supporters weren't happy with the fact that they kind of went another midfielder, but they went best available talent. He was a possibility to go top 3 in this mid-season draft. I know a few other people were talking about, well, these guys missed out on the draft at the start of the year. So, really they're either 50th or 60th best player, and possibly, but then some of these guys have, had 12 games to mature. They haven't played a lot of footy over the last 2 years, so, some of them didn't get the chance to shine. And also, just to develop their bodies and that. So, someone like Carmichael, who's, put a bit of height and size on, it'd be interesting to see kind of where he would fit in the draft now. It might be a sort of 2025 pick and that, so it's not as far back as I think some people have been making out. And just how the Pies will fit him in, because he's looked really good in the Sandful. He's played 8 games this year, averaging 105 AFL fantasy, can go forward and kick goals, loves to tackle, a bit like Turner there as well. So yeah, some good options there. The Bombers won Massimo D'Ambrosio. Great story there, and he's been playing in the Richmond VFL. Looked really good there. Unfortunately, did his shoulder butt on the weekend, so it's a 4 to 6 week. It's a more of a long-term prospect, something that we may have a look at for next season. Hopefully the kid gets some games this year, but from a Supercoach perspective, if we really want to be greedy, you'd hope they kind of put him in ice or let him learn the system and look at him next year. Jai Carley was number 1 for West Coast. I know there were some rumours about West Coast not picking him, but yeah, clearly the star player out there. AFL Fantasy points 96, but I think he's going to be more Supercoach relevant, which is good for us. Just kind of more that impact player. Can definitely go for the midfield, and we've already seen West Coast blooding some midfielders in there. They've got to blood these midfielders staying down the bottom of the ladder. So yeah, one definitely to look at. And there, as Chris said last year, some of these players need time to learn systems, especially someone like Jai Carley, who hasn't, been playing for the Dandenong Stingrays, hasn't been in the AFL system. So it's going to take a few weeks for him to get up to scratch, learn all their systems and that. So more, I guess, as it comes down those last sort of 6 weeks, might be that last sort of downgrade of a rookie to try to get somebody else up. So wouldn't be moving on them yet. The ones that possibly you could be moving on right now, Max Ramsden will be an interesting one for Hawthorn, because they're down in rucks. Cozzy, again, is playing in rucks this week, so you might see Hawthorn let him get a couple of weeks to find the system and then just, and fit him in there. Unfortunately, he's only a ruck, which is, would have been great if it was a ruck forward, but yeah, their ruck stocks are in all sorts. Sammy Durden, the former Roo, who was a first-round draft pick back in the day. I think it was about 8 years ago. Carlton's ruck, key defensive stocks have really taken a hit. Wiedering going down with that injury last week. Got Marchbank. Who else? I think Boyd. There was somebody else up there. It's got me at the moment. And then on top of that, Liam Jones obviously retiring because of the COVID dilemma at the start of the year. So yeah, I think they're down to Lockie Young. So would not be surprised to see Durden. The Blues got their bye, so yeah, the following week, it would not surprise me if he came straight in. 123k. I don't think his scoring is going to be that great because he's going to play lockdown key position. But at the same time, with Cleary in and out of the side, Jacob Weir will have some question marks about will McVeigh stick with him or go Hamilton or go someone else. Yeah, it might just be the sort of player we need while Wiedering's out for 6 to 8 weeks to just come in there and fill a role in our defence, and a great downgrade maybe for like a McCartan so we can get somebody else up. So yeah, one to definitely look at there. And the other one with a lot of discussion at the moment is Bryn Teakle, Port Adelaide. Now, I don't expect how many games this guy's going to play, unless probably something happens with Sammy Hayes, because the Port Rock Stocks are a bit thin at the moment, a bit like Hawthorn there. But he is a 102k ruck forward. So for those with Hayes like me, I'm looking at 2 more weeks of him and then swapping him to Teakle, take the cash, which will make about 200 and, what would that be? Well, what's Sammy Hayes at the moment? 200, he's 308, so you'd hope Hayes could go a little bit more on. His break-even's 49, so if he could get himself to a 320, 330, and we could make 230k from that, that would be perfect. And those in particular who have English or Darcy Cameron in their forward line, you can use Teakle as that swap in case, a Gorn or a Witts missed a week for whatever reason. So I think that will be a popular move in a couple of weeks, but Hayes still has a job to do getting us through this bye period. So that's pretty much all on the mid-season. But obviously there was 17 named. Most of the other guys there I don't expect to play. Clubs have also gone a bit of a long-term view, which is fine. And each club does it differently. There was plenty of clubs that passed this time. St Kilda passed early, and then Adelaide, West Coast, North, Freo, Collingwood all had a second pick, and they all decided to pass there. With this, there's list management that comes into it. They have to obviously pay the player if they were to delist them at the end of the year, and there's payouts and stuff like that. So I can understand why clubs have done that, and hopefully we get a bit of a gem like in previous years. So Jai Newcomb's obviously doing really well. Pickett won a premiership in his first game and has been a vital part of Richmond's midfield setup. And then you've got Sharman for St Kilda, who's looked really good up in their forward line. Snelling a couple of years ago for the Bombers. Unfortunately, he's been injured this year. So, yeah, there's been some good pickups, and I'm sure, out of those 17 picks, we'll get at least one or two that'll, put their mark on the competition. All right, questions for this week. Callum, what rookie ruck forward and forward defender options are most likely to get a game time and valuable to assist in the swinging of McCartan and English? Very good one, because we just talked about English there, and Darcy Cameron, if you had him. Teakle is the one. As I said, more likely the Hawthorn player in Ramson's going to be playing. But if you want the 102 basement guy to swing, you don't really, Teakle playing would just be a bonus. But the reality is you want to be able to swing one of those guys and have that forward coverage. So he's definitely the one. In regards to forward, I think he asked forward defender options. That's actually a really good question there. Let's go dual position. We'll have a look at that, see if there's anyone else worth getting. I guess you could look at that Patrick Voss. A few people have had him sitting there as their loophole option this year because he is defender forward based at 102. I don't expect him to play. Carmichael's the mid forward, but that doesn't really help you for your question there because a couple of these guys coming in, and then we kind of get more expensive. So I think if it's a case where you just want somebody as your cheapest player, let's just say you've got a Sam DeConning and you want to maximise cash, Patrick Voss, SDK down to Patrick Voss, lets you have that loophole option, also opens up a loophole each week for your VC and captaincy, and the Bombers are probably expected to play many games on the sort of the Saturday evening, Sunday, late in the round, just because of the floating fixture and how the Bombers are performing. So, yeah, I think he's probably your best option there, mate. Callum's also asked, who are the must-have mid-season rookies? Kind of just talked about that. So Turner, Hayes, Carmichael, Durden are the ones that you're looking at who will be playing. Cully as well, just about how long it'll take to set up, get them used to the systems. To Michael, is it time to trade Bruce? I did that last week. The word out last week, like the week before, kind of had a flu. Then there was issue with, there was rumours going around about Flynn being unwell. That was kind of disproven on the morning of the game, but so Bruce was just played in the reserves. McVeigh's come in, and we talked about this. How will GWS set up and the new coach and his favourites and that? And we saw Hamilton go out. Weir came in. Obviously, McVeigh's seen enough with Flynn and wants to back him in at the moment. Flynn played reasonably well last week. Bruce went back to the reserves and did not play well. So I'm expecting actually Bruce might actually be out of the side. When he comes in and plays, he's a 100, 110 guy. I've got no issues with that. And if you've got the ability to hold him, hold him. But yeah, if you're in kind of that struggle where you need to get players up, Bruce might have to be the one to go. It's going to be one of those debates each week, I think, for the GWS coaching staff. So I was happy that I got him to Bruce, to Wits. If you've got the cash and you can go Bruce to English, absolutely do that. Even Gorn's down to $5.50 now. So if you don't have Gorn, Bruce to Gorn is an easy trade. To Matthew, what should I have for dinner for tonight? Chicken Kiev and chicken Parma. Well, by the time I've uploaded this, it'll be Friday night and that. I'm one of the... I don't want to call myself weird, but yeah, I don't eat chicken and that. It actually makes me ill. Apparently there's 40,000 Australians like me and that, but I've only met 2 other people. So yeah, I don't actually eat chicken, but most of my mates out there love their Parmas and that, so I don't think you can go past the Parma. I did send you a KFC bucket emoji and that, so maybe get into some KFC. Abdul, can you study the number 1 rated team and let me know how many trades he's used? Yeah, I think I did have a bit of a look at that team, and cash generation, you are correct. That looks a bit of a problem. And it's so that's Presti's Premiers leading the way at the moment. It's had his backline set up all year with Sicily and Stewart, so well done there, because those two have been absolutely flying, and every time we look at trying to get Stewart in, he goes berserk. So Stewart at home hasn't played that many games at Geelong so far, and he's killed it both times. So I think his next 3 away, and away from Skilled or GmbH or A or whatever it's called these days. So somebody to look at on the run home, because they do have quite a lot of games on the run home, and I'll get that up. So Geelong, they've got Bulldogs, then they've got West Coast away, so he should probably feast on them. Then they've got the Tigers at the G, but after that it's North. Then they've got Melbourne, Carlton's at the G, Port's at Adelaide Oval, but then they've got the Bulldogs again down at GMHBA, St Kilda there as well, Suns are away, West Coast down there, so that's 1, 2, 3, what have we got there, 4, 5, I think 5 of their last 8. So if there's a way for that last spot to get Stewart in, definitely look at that, because he's absolutely killing it down the Geelong, the skinny ground, teams bombing, and he's just freeing himself up. And now that they've got DeConning down there, the ability for Blissars when Stanley plays, the player's kind of that key defender or that third defender, just let Stewart do whatever he wants. You'd hope teams kind of man him up. But looking at this Prestige Premiers, they've still got McCartan and Rosas that they can do something with. Sammy Hayes, you'll able to downgrade him. Saligo, well, he'll go up a little bit more in value, so will Clark. So he does have some options there, mate. Rory Thompson's obviously an issue, and then Buku as well. But I don't think it's all dire for him. He still does have some moves to make there. But it's interesting to kind of track how he'll go, or she'll go. That's Caleb, so I'm going to gather he. I guess you can't gather those things anymore, but so he's Caleb's 26,683 points overall, 220 points ahead of Emil, and definitely Emil, who's number 2, and Abdul's down at 9, so roughly 300 points behind. That's literally like captaincy. Like last week I talked about giving up 40 points there, and I think I've done that like 2 or 3 of the last week. So if you can get a good VC in, if you say Abdul had an English and he went off again and Prestia didn't get on him and just got on a kind of 120 guy, well, all of a sudden it's 260 points. It's nothing in it. It's kind of like one trade decision, and you could be up there again, or right up there in the the 50k discussion. To Matty G, should I take a hit this week and save trades for next week? Yeah, the problem is if you trade this week, that player that you bring in will have a buy. So the ones that you kind of want to target is English and Bailey Smith, just because of their break even. And now that Bailey Smith's picked up forward status, all the dual position players that have come out, and the big 2 out of that was Bailey Smith and Bont, as we were kind of expecting to get that dual position. So they're the 2 that you want to be looking at, but at the same time, the Dogs have the bye next week, and then that could seriously affect your side. So without looking into everyone individual sides, and that's hard to comment, but have a look with your round 13 side, how many Dogs or how many other players you got the bye. If you can still field 18, bring in Smith, bring in English, bring in Bont. If you can't, well, maybe you need to hold off for after their bye. If you're a head-to-head league player, well, who cares? Take the loss next week and just load up on as many of those Dogs as you can. You could have your whole forward line be Dogs, even though I kind of prefer having Parker and Brody down there. But there is a world where I've seen a couple teams have all the Bulldogs up there. All right, so we've got Brad. How many trades should we have left after the buys if team is fully completed? I always try to base it around that sort of 6 mark, and that maybe because of the COVID issues and that. In a perfect world, you maybe have 8 or 10, and then maybe have 1 boost left. But if your team is finished, all you're doing is having those trades there to cover for major injuries, or have the flexibility in case you get really high up in the rankings like an Abdul, or you're playing for your league wins and you want to make a move coming into those finals, or if you're trying to make finals, trying to make a move there. But in a perfect world, are you going to get more than 6 injuries? Touch wood, you don't. Peter K, was trading out Tom Green the right move? Yes. Or could he still be considered a keeper? I haven't analysed GWS and that. No, I've got no issue with the trading out of Tom Green. just because the way the Giants are setting up now. Canelio's going back in the guts. Anyone who picked up Josh Kelly 3 or 4 weeks ago, my old mate there, Benny Boy, absolutely hates me talking about him, but I did talk about him in that pod bar, Benny, so you can acknowledge me for that, bud. He's been absolutely flying. He's back as their major ball winner in there. Cogs is the support, and then you've got sort of the other guys, Taranto, Tom Green. They're kind of sharing that load there, but like he's still good. He's still going to go in that 90 sort of range and that, but I just don't think he's going to do what he did at the start and that was more on Leon Cameron, just banking him in as the main guy. And we talked about some weeks where Kelly was ending up in the forward line, so was Canelio. And now that they're back in the guts, it kind of set up there, changed their setup where Green's getting enough CBAs, but doesn't mean just because you're getting CBAs doesn't mean you're getting the ball. Like there's players that say the Bombers, for example, get CBAs, but Parrish always is the one that gets the ball. So you've always got, Melbourne's another example. Oliver Petrarca, there's always a third. There's like Viney in there, or Brayshaw. Yeah, they go great. 90, they might go 100, but they're not going those massive scores because they've got Oliver and Petrarca that does that. That's just natural. Michael Fleming, bring English in this round with a low break even or wait. Perfect world. If you can afford to bring him in this week, bring him in. Abdul, my plan force player to have the best of the best means you have to make sacrifices. Interesting. I'll have close to the best in all lines except the midfield where my M8 will be Brody. Question is it worth trading Brody to Steele in round 16-17, which will then leave me with 2 trades, just 2 trades left plus McCartan on the bench who can be sub. Yeah, I don't mind that. And that's something I know I've done in the past, especially the year sort of ranked 200 and a couple of the mistakes mistakes. It was more the case of going for it and trying to finish as high as possible. But that year I had an M9 and then I also had a bench player like a McCartan who could swing between forward and defence. So if you've got a 1 week injury, it's just really easy to bring one of them on, and also gives you the ability to loophole each week. So some people set that up and go, okay, I'm going to go down to those 2 trades or whatever. I'm going to use all my trades, but I'm going to put like a Dangerfield or a Mitchell or someone like that as my M9 and have a McCartan there as backup. There's no issue with doing that too, especially if you've got a Darcy Cameron or a Tim English who can also loophole on your ruck. And then you're only hoping their injuries aren't long term. If it's a 1 weeker, well, you don't mind 1 weekers to say a McRae or somebody who's highly owned, because you've got the coverage where other people might have to use a trade to keep up there. So I don't mind it, Abdul. Just maybe try to keep a couple more up your sleeve because you're a real chance, buddy. To Mark, are there any of their mid-season rookies? We've talked about that, especially ruck forward. Yeah, get on that Teakle guy. I'm not going to play much, but he's just there as the ability to loophole. And to Cade, Darcy for Bruce or hold Bruce and hope he comes back. Yeah, get on Darcy. And that we had a quick discussion about that last week. Looks really good. I was kind of surprised how well he went against Melbourne, but how Freo played in that second half was unbelievable. Darcy's issue is his injury, so you need a get-out plan or a backup in case he misses a week or two, because he always misses weeks. But when he plays, God, he scores so well, and would not be surprised if our starting rucks next year are Darcy and English. But again, you just kind of need a plan for English for Darcy and even English, because they do get the odd injury. So, yeah, definitely have a thought about that. And over on the Twitter, Michikos, pay up for Sick now or wait for Sinclair next week and use the cash somewhere else. Hard not to have him in the team. Can't get Stewart with his bye. Yeah, it's killing me as well. And I know Benny and I were talking about this today. I was so big on Whitfield not being top 8, and I still took Ben's advice on getting Whitfield over Sicily. It's absolutely killed my season. And sometimes it's just those little decisions. But I did get Sinclair, and he's flying. We talked about with Steele out. He's one of their main guys in there. Another 140 last week. So, yeah, I don't mind it running, like getting in Sinclair, hoping your opponents or some of those highly ranked people don't have Sinclair and they've only got Sicily, and then fingers crossed Sicily has one of these brain fades and hits somebody and then misses a week, and that's where you're probably going to make that up. But I think Sinclair can still score similar to Sicily going the run home as well as Sicily's playing. Sinclair, until Steele gets back at least, is going to be a really good scorer. Just the question, when Steele gets back, how's that going to affect? But then in saying that, Sicily or any other defender could be out injured then, and then you might have the sideways. To Corey, should I go for 18 this week or hold off as I have 17 but have 14 premiums playing, as next week can get Walsh and Parrish? Well, yeah, it's a good one. I don't mind that. I've seen that in the past. I think I did that last year, where I was happy to 17 because if it meant trading in just, say, a rookie, I know Ben's done this. He's going early on Mitchie Owens, even though he's not playing this week. After he had a really good game last week, he's going to be probably the best cash cow next week. Is going, well, okay, I'll play 17 because if I was to bring in a rookie anyway, they might score a 10, 20, 30. We saw that week with Morris Rioli scored a 7. So then you waste a trade for a guy that's going to have a buy and could potentially get dropped for like a low score anyway. If it pays off and they go big, well done to you. And then if you bring in a premium, well, you're going to be in the same situation the following week as well with that buy. So, playing with 17, maybe if you're head-to-head, have a look at some of your matchups. You might still be able to get the job done anyway, so it's not the end of the world. Obviously, if it's 14 premiums, that's still pretty good because there'll be players you're playing against and other people that won't have that many. But if you're in a head-to-head matchup and it gets down to the last game and you need that, well, you've always got that trade up the sleeve if you need to pull the trigger to get the win. To Braden, Darcy or English more important by this week? If English, is it worth getting Darcy next week? I don't mind if you've got the cash to do it, because you've got the option to put English in the forward line and then get Darcy in your ruck next week. So if you've got the cash, no brainer, mate. To DV, do you like Luke Ryan? This is definitely a question for Chris, because I know Chris would absolutely be throwing stuff right now. He's had Luke Ryan all year and it's frustrated him. I'm a little biased because I really like Luke Ryan. For whatever reason, he's my favourite Freo player, and I just like the way he goes about it as a defender, or if not, a keeper cash gen option to make a premium defender. Also, are there any recommended bargain priced mids? I heard last year players were gifted extra trades. Is this likely? I'm at 10 trades, no cash, and still unfinished team. I get that emoji you've sent in there too, DV. In regards to the trades, no, that's why we got 35 this year, so there wouldn't be addition ones unless something massively changed with COVID. But it looks like most of the countries kind of got a bit more of a handle on that, as much as unfortunately people are passing away and people are still getting ill. I don't think it's going to be the full lockdowns that we've had in the past. So if that doesn't happen, then we're not getting extra trades. So you're going to be in a bit of trouble with that. So you do need to go the bargain price players. So your best bargain price players, as I get it up and look at that. So you're probably looking, I'm gathering you're talking about guys in that sort of 400 to sort of 5 range. If you start going less than that, you're not going to find anyone really decent enough who's going to keep up. There's obviously always the diamond in the roughs and that a little bit more expensive and not what you're talking about, but I know a few people talk about Ollie Wines this week. Luke McDonald, I was talking about him ages ago, absolutely killing it. So I think after that 28, when I was talking about him at 380, he's gone 101, 76, 102, 98, 91, unfortunately 63, 127 and 132. So as a guy at 474 is not a bad option there. Gresham's looked pretty good with Steele out, but then I sort of get more worried about that. Luke Ryan at 450 is an absolute bargain for his price. The problem with Ryan, it's always the same thing. He is going to throw in 60s at you, but he will throw in 140s. Like he's already gone 141 and 156 this year. That is what he does. So if you're an overall player, he's not so bad because you know he's going to throw in those big scores. If you're a head-to-head player, he's going to frustrate you because he'll lose you more games than you'll win. So it's not terrible because he's got the ability to average well. And goes on runs, but he's had injury problems in the past, and those low scores that he throws in, especially when he has to play key defender, a bit of a problem there. Dylan Moore's dropped off, so that's a bit of a problem. So I should be looking at this by average. Even Isaac Heaney's gone down to 460. This is what he does. He's ups and downs and that. You really kind of want to look at people for their draw. So that was the thing at the start of the year when Heaney was playing, North, West Coast, GWS when they were struggling, he was absolutely flying. Now it's a bit of a different story because they've got some more tougher games with the D's this week and that, but maybe somebody to look at a little bit further after the buys because he, when they're playing the Crows and North in that run home, the Giants again, he definitely can pick up and lead into the buys. Tommy Mitchell's at 480, had the 85 last week. I did recommend holding and waiting, but we know what he can do. His break even this week still only 70. He's not gonna go up on that much cash unless you're really strapped. But he's still got 2 more games before the bye. Yeah, he's not a bad option there at 480. Jakey Lloyd's at 490. Be interesting again what happens with him with Braden Campbell. So you've got a couple options there. Angus Brayshaw's been playing pretty well for 450. But again, you start getting to areas where these guys are kind of averaging 90. If you can kind of get on a run, Tim Kelly could be big risk, big reward. His last 4 weeks, 95, 114, 80, and 139. They do have a few soft games coming up after the bye, but then some of these midfielders, sometimes it doesn't matter. They play harder teams. They just run around and do what they want. But they've all got sort of interesting issues. Matty Crouch coming back, 62. He could drop some coin, but they play West Coast this week. Could very easily come out and go 110, 120. Has a habit of it. Tommy Hawkins is the one that I've recommended before. The 450k. Last 3 weeks, 108, 85, 81. But the interesting is that run home, they do play after their bye West Coast twice. They've also got the Suns. Suns a bit tougher team these days, but they do have them. They have the Kangas down at Geelong. So Tommy Hawkins, if you, especially overall, but even if you're looking for somebody for the week that you want to throw on the vice captaincy, it could be a good call there. The Goey's still at 426. So that's probably as much value as you can get for a sort of mid-forward guy. So there's some options. I'd rather the premiums, but I get some people have got themselves in a bit of issues there because of their cash gen situation. So it's kind of have a look at them, have a look at the fixture, have a look at their role. Like DeGoey, he gets in that midfield. He's an impact player. So he can definitely go on a run and average 110 on a run home. You're not necessarily needing these guys to be finished top 6. You just need them for their sort of 8 to 10 weeks to able to average you a decent score compared to some of these premium guys. Like a Tom Hawkins, he might throw in a couple of 60s on the way home. But against a couple of those weaker teams, him and Jeremy Cameron could very much go 140, 150. We've seen Hawkins go 200 before. It's not out of the question that, against West Coast, the way they're playing, and especially, they take West Coast down Geelong, like the Dogs and Richmond who aren't, they're doing all right. They're around the mark, but they're not one of the top teams, beating West Coast by 100 points. Like, if Geelong needed the percentage, what could they do on their day against West Coast? So they're just some food for thought there. To Brad, defensive upgrade buys, not an issue. Pay up for Stewart before he's 650 or go Dawson. I already have Sinclair and Sicily. Go get Stewart, mate. Simple as that. Isaac, I always like questions from Isaac. Thoughts on Bruce, Heaney and McCartan to Darcy, English and Cleary. The problem with Cleary, he looks like he's the new sub guy for Bevo. If it's not him, do you go 1 week early and just go get Weir, but then there's no guarantees? Or if you've got that extra 6k, get Cleary up to Durden. I'm confident enough that he's going to get some games, but it's an interesting one there. Jason said, not from the draft, but Archer, a good chance to play. We talked about Archer before. He's on the cusp of playing. You would think North would give him some games, but there's no guarantees there. Nelson, my old work colleague, 18 clubs stupid for not drafting Florcina, or are we the ones that are stupid? And I replied to him on Twitter and said he looked good, but apparently wasn't in any of the club plans. I look at the mid-season draft as more as a needs-based, but interesting. Some clubs took who they thought was the best available. So, he looked good in that game that he played. I think he scored about 100 Supercoach in that, but there's different reasons why clubs are looking, and I think a lot of the ages of the players that went outside Carlton needing a needs base in Durden, they were sort of that 18, 19, 20-year-old to develop long term. And yeah, West Coast, as much as they probably could do with him in there, yeah, they've got to start with the rebuild. So picking up somebody who's a bit more older and mature, as good as they probably could be playing in the footy system, aren't going to be there. And the problem is, if they're going to go to a top club, and a couple of those top clubs didn't have picks, they're more going there as a break glass in case of emergency. Like Melbourne, say, Evolve or Petrarca went down and they needed a mature age just to come in. But some of those clubs, their list is already ready for that. Like Melbourne, they already got Dunstan. So yeah, it's you'd like to see some of these guys play. We saw what Nick Martin did, come straight in and looks at home. So I wouldn't be surprised if a couple of these guys get picked up. But then, same time, look at Nathan Freeman. He's been fantastic at the VFL level. But unfortunately, after that injury that he had, and just other clubs just sort of got a bit wary on that. And it would have been great to see him get an opportunity back in the AFL, but it just unfortunately doesn't happen sometimes. Like, it just depends what clubs and list managers are trying to do. And that is it for the questions this week, unless I've got a late one from Facebook, which I think I do, from Timmy Ward. And his question asked, T-Call, yes, mate. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, so that's all the questions this week. As I said, an interesting one, buys and that. If you can, in a perfect world, you want to hold this week. However, if you're in a position where you've got plenty of players coverage next week, English, Bailey Smith, Bont are your three that you're focusing on. Those dogs are now, all three of them have forward status. Well, English already had it, but you have Bont and Bailey Smith. You definitely want to look at plans of getting them in, and I'm unsure if I can get them in this week because, as I said, I've got more than enough players playing. So it depends if I go that way because I don't have as many next week, or if I hold up and then hopefully find the cash for them next week. But Bailey Smith's break even, I think it's still in the 50s, so he's the one. Timmy English is the same. It's going to go up and spike in value. And Stewart for the Cats, that's another one to definitely consider if you've got the cash. And so if you're in a position where you've got a big treasure chest of cash there, go out spending, go get these players because it will put you ahead of the game. And as I said, happy super coaching. It'll be an interesting week with these buys. Probably in a couple of weeks' time, we'll start seeing these mid-season guys start floating through. Hopefully, Durden for next week. But outside of that, you usually get a few late rookies, but they probably become a little bit less relevant. You're kind of looking at those guys 1 or 2K to maximise cash, and then just kind of leaving either that dual position player like Abdul was talking about, like a McCartan, to swing there between your F7 and D7. So you just want a little bit of backup, but we're not looking at those as much as the cash cows anymore. But as we say, thank you for everybody for tuning in, and continue to send in your questions, and we'll do our best to answer them before the lockout starts for the first game. That's all that. Have a great weekend, and we'll talk soon. Bye.